Okay, so we each have to roll one die
Who goes first?
to see who goes first.
Alright.
Uh-oh. Uh-oh.
Uh-oh. I think they're waiting. Is it?
I think you get to go first. I think that's what that means. I just made that up. As long as we agree, it doesn't
We
matter.
agree. We agree on the ambiguity.
Yeah, that's right.
Hey, Karun. So this is my friend Pat and I playing Farkle. And we are at his cabin at Wallowa Lake. Pat grew up with Scott and Eric Quimps and invited Eric and I up to spend the weekend at his lake. Eric couldn't make it, but I went up and we actually had a really good time together this last weekend. So we showed up Friday evening, and he has a cabin up on the north end of the lake, right at the foot of the mountains there. And we walked around a little bit, had a nice dinner, and then played Farkle. I don't know if you noticed, but those dice were huge, and it's because we couldn't find small dice. All he had were these ornamental dice that were sitting on his mantelpiece. So he got that big baking pan to use as a shaking can or a shaking cup to throw our dice, and I actually let him beat me at Farkle because it was his place. Then the next morning, we decided we were going to hike the east moraine of Wallowa Lake. Now, Scott had gone up with Kimbra and stayed at Pat's place last fall, and he came back and told me about hiking up this trail. And he got up to the top of the moraine, but then he was a little confused as to whether or not it was okay for him to keep going or whether he'd be trespassing. Well, it turns out that the state has acquired the land or the right-of-way to the land since then. I think they did it in January. So Patrick and I were able to walk all the way down, almost all the way to Joseph. It was 4 miles each way, so a total of 8 miles. Here you see, actually looking east, that's the Locksaw Range off in the distance on the far side of Hell's Canyon. But we were more interested in looking for a view something like this, with the flowers in the foreground and the mountains, the eagle-capped wilderness in the background, and the lake in the middle ground. Pat wants to create a stained glass window for his cabin, and he'd seen a picture from this area someplace. So we wandered down. We took quite a bit of time, maybe 3 hours, to go the 4 miles down, heading towards Joseph. And then we had lunch and then quickly hiked back in like an hour and a little less than an hour and a half. And it was just a beautiful, beautiful day and just so enjoyable. The weather was lovely. After that, there was only one thing to do. So I actually talked Pat into getting in the lake with me. Now, it was really interesting. I looked at the temperature gauge at the mouth of the lake, and the diurnal variation in water temperature was pretty extreme. It was down into the low 30s at night and into the mid 40s during the day. I think it was about 45 or 46 degrees when we were in it. It didn't feel that cold to me, not compared to when I was with you in the Mississippi. I think it was 37 when we were in the Mississippi. But also, it was in the probably mid to upper 70s air temperature, and the sun was beating down on my shoulders, which also made a difference. And also, we had just walked 8 miles, and I was hot and sweaty when we got in, so I didn't feel that cold. So we went back and had another nice dinner. The next morning, that would be today, we took a little hike up, heading north up into the mountains. And this was around 3 miles loop, maybe a little less. But this is the Wallowa River before it flows into the lake. And it was really great. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. I had a great weekend, enjoyed my time with Pat. Looking forward to doing it again.